A lonely island stared across endless waters. Dreams stretched further than its rugged shores. Winds whispered stories of unknown worlds. Restlessness awakened something deep within Britain. Seafarers carved paths through shifting waves. Simple journeys became quests for meaning. Encounters with distant cultures sparked wonder. Wonder slowly transformed into calculated ambition. Curiosity turned into strategy and strength. Strategy grew into expansion and dominance. A small island prepared for global destiny. The empire's long, complex story now begins. Britain looked outward toward shifting horizons. Sailors prepared ships for uncertain voyages. Dreams carried them beyond familiar shores. Ambition whispered through every rising tide. Merchants sought spices, silk, and treasures. Trade promised wealth beyond common imagination. Voyages offered fortune for daring hearts. Britain prepared to chase distant opportunity. Old maps revealed worlds half understood. Blank spaces invited bold maritime exploration. Mystery fueled determination across stormy seas. Curiosity became Britain's earliest navigator. Winds guided ships into foreign waters. Sailors trusted stars to chart direction. The unknown felt strangely comforting, inspiring. Purpose strengthened with every passing wave. Traders dreamed of routes unclaimed before. Markets overseas shimmered with priceless goods. Profit became a compass for expansion. Distance no longer frightened restless explorers. Foreign merchants welcomed Britain cautiously. Goods exchanged with hesitant cultural curiosity. New relationships opened unseen opportunities. Connections expanded Britain's commercial reach. Early voyages faced storms and hunger. Yet determination outlasted every harsh trial. Courage rose stronger than nature's fury. Explorers pressed on with unwavering resolve. Ships returned laden with exotic cargo. Crowded ports erupted with sudden excitement. Britain sensed fortune in foreign ventures. Success encouraged greater exploratory ambition. Stories spread about distant golden kingdoms. Rumors fueled dreams of endless possibilities. Explorers imagined routes across vast oceans. Hope grew alongside Britain's maritime courage. Each journey refined growing trade knowledge. Seas became teachers shaping British strategy. New skills strengthened the nation's confidence. Experience prepared them for larger missions. Voyages soon required deeper strategic thinking. Trade evolved into deliberate imperial planning. Routes became vital arteries of influence. Britain recognized opportunity in global movement. Explorers mapped coastlines with greater accuracy. Their records guided future colonial ventures. Every discovery shaped Britain's identity. Exploration turned slowly into expansion. Ports buzzed with unfamiliar sounds and goods. Crowds welcomed sailors returning victorious. Foreign scents drifted through busy harbors. Empire dreams quietly stirred in hearts. Sea journeys marked Britain's first awakening. Waves carried hope toward global destiny. Exploration birthed foundations of empire. Ambition sailed far beyond narrow shores. Small outposts appeared along distant coastlines. Wooden forts faced winds of unknown lands. Settlers anchored Britain's earliest overseas presence. Every footprint carried ambition's silent promise. Merchants built storehouses beside active harbors. Goods flowed steadily through fragile settlements. Trade strengthened Britain's influence far away. Commerce became the backbone of footholds. Settlers adapted to harsh and familiar climates. Strange landscapes challenged their survival instincts. Each day tested resolve and endurance. Determination kept their hopes alive. Local alliances formed through shared necessity. Mutual needs encouraged cautious early cooperation. Diplomatic gestures ensured settlement protection. Trust grew slowly between distant communities. Rivers led deeper into uncharted territories. Waterways became lifelines for early movement. Forests sheltered Britain's scattered outposts. Nature shaped strategies for survival. Diseases threatened fragile developing populations. Medical knowledge struggled in foreign conditions. Survival became a constant difficult battle, yet settlers refused to abandon hope. Trade networks expanded around emerging settlements. Goods circulated between natives and newcomers. Exchange encouraged peace and mutual growth. Partnership strengthened Britain's growing presence. Governors imposed laws to maintain order. Structure prevented chaos within communities. Organization shaped daily colonial life. Governance began defining British identity. Rough paths transformed into reliable routes. Travel increased communication between settlements. Cooperation expanded through easier connection. Distance slowly shrank under British reach. Small villages evolved into bustling centres. Markets grew with rising local confidence. Population increased with new arrivals. Settlements gained strength and permanence. Outposts demanded stronger administrative control. Leadership expanded with growing responsibilities. Rules guided behavior and trade operations. Colonial governance spread more firmly. Defense walls protected vulnerable settlements. Militias guarded communities against threats. Security encouraged further investment overseas. Fortifications signaled determination for permanence. Cultures blended through daily shared living. Traditions merged into new evolving identities. Communities formed hybrid social structures. Colonial character grew naturally over time. Footholds transformed into thriving strongholds. Influence reached across vast, unfamiliar regions. Small beginnings created paths to empire. Britain's roots deepened far beyond home. Europe observed Britain's rising ambition carefully. Old kingdoms guarded influence with suspicion. New rivalries disrupted long-held power structures. Diplomacy became Britain's subtle battlefield strategy. Alliances shifted frequently among wary empires. Shared threats forged temporary cautious partnerships. Treaties balanced fear with mutual advantage. Europe danced between conflict and negotiation. Spain contested Britain across global seas. Rivalry intensified maritime innovation rapidly. Naval strength became ultimate imperial weapon. Competition reshaped Britain's oceanic ambitions. France opposed Britain on distant shores. Colonial territories became zones of conflict. Battles decided future imperial dominance. Rivalry formed cornerstone of expansion plans. Diplomats carried fragile messages across courts. Negotiations influenced decades of political decisions. Every treaty shaped emerging global boundaries. Words became instruments of strategic advantage. Military readiness intensified across European kingdoms. Nations feared loss of influence fiercely. Britain strengthened fleets with determined vigor. Power demanded preparedness at all times. European rivalries extended into distant colonies. Conflicts unfolded far from European homes. Colonial landscapes became silent war zones. Empires struggled to control overseas territories. Allies transformed into foes with changing interests. Politics shifted unpredictably across Europe. Britain adapted swiftly to turbulent circumstances. Flexibility ensured survival among competing empires. Economic competition magnified diplomatic tensions greatly. Trade became a weapon of strategic leverage. Nations battled fiercely for market dominance. Britain expanded influence through commerce cleverly. Treaties and alliances constantly reshaped dynamics. Friendship today could mean conflict tomorrow. Political landscapes evolved through cautious maneuvering. Every decision influenced imperial future greatly. Rivalries prompted rapid naval improvements. Shipbuilding and tactics advanced significantly. Competitions encouraged innovation and efficiency. Seas became chessboard of global power. Conflicts tested leadership across distant waters. Military engagements influenced diplomacy profoundly. Colonial victories strengthened Britain's international position. Experience refined strategy over time. Tension pushed Britain toward assertive expansion. Threats justified stronger military and navy. Global rivalry honed British ambition sharply. Pressure forged resilience through repeated challenges. through alliances, threats, and calculated risks. Europe shaped Britain's growing global presence. Rivalries sharpened strategic imperial planning. A formidable contender emerged among nations. Tiny wooden huts marked early settlements. Residents worked tirelessly to survive harsh conditions. Every sunrise brought new daily challenges. Foundations grew slowly through constant determination. Crops struggled in unfamiliar foreign soil. Farmers experimented with new cultivation methods. Small successes encouraged weary settlers greatly. Communities stabilized through perseverance and hope. Local trade networks developed around villages. Goods exchanged between settlers and natives. Commerce built trust and mutual dependence. Foundations strengthened for future colonial growth. Churches rose beside growing market squares. Faith anchored families in distant lands. Moral guidance shaped early community life. Culture spread quietly across new territories. Governors enforced laws shaping settlement behavior. Order transformed chaos into organized society. Rules preserved unity among scattered residents. Structure became essential for survival and growth. Roads connected isolated settlements over frontiers. Movement encouraged collaboration and wider trade. Population grew as hope spread steadily. Communities prepared for larger transformations ahead. Small villages evolved into thriving towns. Markets expanded with increasing local confidence. Opportunity attracted waves of new settlers. Colonies awakened from humble, fragile beginnings. Defense structures provided protection against threats. Militias guarded fragile early communities. Security allowed settlements to thrive further. Fortifications signaled permanence and determination. Education and craft skills slowly developed. Apprentices learned trades from experienced settlers. Knowledge helped communities survive and prosper. Skill passed down across generations steadily. Social life grew within markets and fairs. Festivals united settlers after hard weeks. Shared traditions strengthened communal bonds deeply. Settlements developed identity through collective experience. Population increased as settlements attracted newcomers. Trade and security made regions desirable. Small villages slowly transformed into towns. Influence extended steadily across surrounding regions. Port towns became hubs of administration. Officials oversaw law and commerce efficiently. Order maintained control over growing settlements. British identity spread quietly with structure. Communities blended local customs with settlers. Daily life mixed culture and practicality. Hybrid traditions formed unique colonial societies. Identity emerged from shared survival struggles. Small outposts became centers of power. Settlements grew into colonies over time. Early efforts shaped the empire's future. Foundations laid paths for global influence. Years later, small beginnings became nations. Their origins traced to humble settlements. Every colony carried Britain's expanding identity. Early villages became empires across oceans. Britain realized seas were ultimate pathways. Ships became instruments of unmatched global influence. Control of oceans promised worldwide reach. Navy emerged as empire's beating heart. Shipyards built vessels with precise craftsmanship. Engineers designed faster, stronger maritime fleets. Every improvement shifted global power dynamics. Britain invested deeply in naval supremacy. Sailors trained under strict daily discipline. Harsh routines forged endurance and loyalty. Shared hardship strengthened their collective spirit. Navy developed resilience through constant practice. Naval patrols protected distant trading routes. Merchants trusted Britain's maritime shield. Security ensured expansion proceeded without interruption. Economy flourished beneath protective naval wings. Warships projected authority across distant continents. Presence intimidated rivals and challengers alike. Cannons symbolized Britain's growing might. Seas echoed warnings of imperial power. Ports transformed into powerful naval strongholds. Harbors hosted fleets ready for deployment. Infrastructure supported rapid global responses. Britain's presence became swift and decisive. Oceans became maps of imperial ambition. Routes connected colonies with firm unity. Navy bound the empire across waters. Strength radiated over every distant horizon. Realization changed Britain's destiny forever. Naval power dictated centuries of influence. Empire grew seated upon sweeping oceans. Global dominance rested upon naval strength. Officers navigated political and maritime challenges. Strategy extended Britain's reach efficiently. Intelligence guided every tactical decision. Experience forged long-term naval supremacy. Naval victories reinforced empire's expanding power. Battles at sea shaped global perception. Victory encouraged further ambitious undertakings. Dominance grew with each successful engagement. Ships became symbols of national pride. Every vessel reflected technological and strategic skill. Sailors embodied Britain's determination and courage. Empire spirit sailed upon sturdy masts. Trade and protection became inseparable forces. Economy and navy advanced hand in hand. Every port reflected Britain's far-reaching control. Naval mastery ensured survival and prosperity. Rival powers recognized Britain's growing supremacy. Seas became arenas of constant tension. Competitors watched naval growth nervously. Britain consolidated influence across global waters. Through naval might, Britain expanded globally. Power projected from oceans to continents. Maritime strength ensured dominance and security. Empire rose on waves of authority. Seas carried Britain toward unstoppable destiny. Routes, ships, and skill shaped history. Naval power became foundation for worldwide influence. Global reach reflected foresight and ambition. Discover more stories that shaped our world. Subscribe now to explore history's hidden truths. Hit the bell and never miss updates. Join us and witness history come alive. Wars erupted against rival European empires. Borders shifted through battles and treaties. Every victory reshaped influence overseas carefully. Conflict became instrument of expanding power. Armies marched across distant colonial territories. Soldiers endured harsh climates and terrain. Every campaign tested Britain's strength and resolve. War demanded courage, planning, and patience. Battles determined control of trade routes. Ports and cities became primary objectives. Strategy dictated which regions were targeted. Victory translated into political and economic gain. Europeans observed each engagement with anxiety. Alliances shifted under pressure of conflict. Rival powers measured strength against Britain. Every confrontation influenced long-term diplomacy subtly. Naval battles were decisive and brutal. Ships collided amidst thunderous cannon fire. Seas became battlegrounds of national ambition. Every victory increased Britain's maritime dominance. Colonial territories became prizes of war. Conquered lands were administered and defended. Settlements solidified British influence slowly. Conflict extended reach into distant continents. Treaties formalized gains from bloody campaigns. Negotiation often followed forceful military action. Borders were drawn through pen and sword. Diplomacy reinforced victories with legal authority. Rival empires feared Britain's rising power. Every conquest reinforced perception of strength. Neighbors watched expansion with wary eyes. Reputation grew alongside territorial growth steadily. Battles inspired pride across British homeland. Victory parades celebrated distant campaign successes. Public opinion supported further imperial ventures. National identity intertwined with military achievement. Wars required coordination across oceans and continents. Communications linked headquarters with distant armies. Supply lines ensured campaigns could continue. Every logistical success ensured operational efficiency. Military leaders became architects of empire. Strategy blended diplomacy, negotiation, and force. Experience refined Britain's approach to expansion. Lessons learned guided future imperial campaigns. Conflict shaped economic opportunities overseas rapidly. Conquered ports opened trade and revenue streams. Military success secured commercial advantages efficiently. Empire grew through both might and commerce. Diplomacy followed each decisive military action. Negotiations formalized settlements and regional agreements. Alliances protected newly acquired territories. Empire balanced force with strategic partnership carefully. Through war and diplomacy combined effectively. Britain extended influence across continents gradually. Power radiated through both cannon and pen. Expansion relied on skillful management of conflict. Naval victories cemented dominance overseas. Britain's ships ruled oceans with authority. Every fleet demonstrated power and precision. Sea control ensured Empire's global influence. Cannons thundered across distant battlefields. Sailors fought through storms and enemy fire. Victory depended on skill, strategy, courage. Seas became Britain's ultimate arena of power. Naval officers trained with discipline rigorously. Every maneuver perfected for strategic advantage. Experience guided decisions during intense battles. Competence at sea defined imperial supremacy. Ports and trade routes remained secure. Merchant ships moved freely under protection. Colonial economies depended on naval dominance. Control of waters ensured continuous commerce. Rival nations feared Britain's maritime strength. Every engagement displayed naval superiority clearly. Competitors measured fleets against British skill. Dominance grew with each victorious encounter. Fleet coordination became essential for Empire. Ships communicated through signals and orders. Every action contributed to global strategy. Oceanic power reinforced territorial expansion steadily. Victory encouraged further exploration and conquest. Naval success allowed distant lands acquisition. Power radiated from controlled sea lanes. Empire expanded through control of oceans. Seas became lifelines for commercial enterprise. Convoys transported goods safely across waters. Protection encouraged trade and settlement growth. Maritime security strengthened Empire's economic base. Naval tradition fostered pride and loyalty. Sailors became symbols of national identity. Service at sea inspired collective ambition. Every victory elevated Britain's international stature. Innovations improved ship design and navigation. Faster, stronger vessels outmaneuvered rival fleets. Technology reinforced Britain's strategic maritime advantage. Engineering became a tool of imperial expansion. Battles tested leadership and tactical planning. Admirals coordinated fleets with calculated precision. Experience shaped doctrine for future engagements. Lessons learned ensured continued dominance at sea. Naval victories reinforced Britain's negotiating power. Rival powers approached diplomacy cautiously. Strength at sea influenced territorial agreements. Empire expanded through both war and negotiation. Through naval supremacy, Britain controlled global trade. Seas connected continents under British command. Fleet victories ensured Empire's lasting reach. Maritime power became foundation of worldwide authority. New territories were gained through negotiation. Diplomacy often secured lands without bloodshed. Treaties formalized Britain's expanding influence carefully. Words became instruments of imperial power. Alliances allowed access to strategic regions. Partners shared resources, trade, and protection. Every agreement strengthened Britain's global reach. Cooperation ensured smoother expansion overseas. Conquest brought distant lands under British control. Armies and navies enforced territorial claims effectively. Settlers followed to establish permanent presence. Colonies solidified Empire's authority abroad. Negotiators balanced threats with political skill. Rival powers accepted settlements reluctantly. Maps were redrawn through careful deliberation. Diplomacy reinforced military successes subtly. Treaties granted Britain access to valuable ports. Strategic islands became footholds in oceans. Coastal regions provided trade and naval advantage. Every acquisition strengthened global commercial networks. Indigenous leaders were approached cautiously for agreements. Promises, gifts, and pressure influenced decisions. Local politics were navigated carefully by emissaries. Empire expanded with minimal resistance where possible. Every region required administration and protection. Governors established laws to maintain order. Settlements grew under organized management steadily. Colonial infrastructure supported growing populations effectively. Alliances sometimes involved intermarriage or treaties. Cultural exchange accompanied political negotiations subtly. Local traditions merged with British administration. Communities adapted to dual influence over time. Military action followed failed negotiations carefully. Force secured territories when diplomacy faltered. Battles ensured compliance and territorial stability. Empire expanded through both words and weapons. European rivals monitored Britain's territorial growth. Competition influenced negotiations and strategic planning. Every agreement considered international consequences carefully. Empire's expansion balanced diplomacy with calculated threat. New lands became sources of trade and wealth. Colonial economies integrated into British networks. Settlements provided resources for growing empire. Every acquisition strengthened empire's global position. Treaties often included long-term obligations and rights. Strategic interests were protected through careful wording. Legal authority underpinned imperial expansion slowly. Documents reinforced Britain's claims internationally. Expansion through negotiation demonstrated strategic patience. Empire grew through careful planning and persuasion. Words shaped continents almost as effectively as force. Diplomacy became an essential tool of global influence. Through conquest, alliances, and negotiation combined, Britain extended influence across continents steadily. Territorial gain secured empire's growing strength. Expansion balanced diplomacy with calculated military power. Expansion targeted regions with strategic value. Islands, ports, and coasts became priorities. Geography dictated where empire would extend. Control of key points ensured lasting influence. Islands provided safe harbors for naval fleets. Ports became hubs of trade and communication. Coastal regions allowed monitoring of maritime routes. Every location strengthened empire's operational reach. Naval dominance ensured security of acquired lands. Ships patrolled waters surrounding strategic holdings. Maritime presence deterred rivals from challenging Britain. Power projected through controlled seas effectively. Settlements were established near vital locations. Colonists built forts and warehouses carefully. Communities supported trade, defense, and administration. Strategic regions became centers of imperial activity. Access to trade routes increased wealth steadily. Control of choke points ensured uninterrupted commerce. Merchants and navy worked hand in hand. Empire thrived on secure strategic positions. Military outposts guarded critical coastal regions. Cannons protected settlements and ships efficiently. Garrisons maintained order against internal threats. Fortifications ensured British authority remained unchallenged. Mapping identified key points for expansion carefully. Explorers charted islands, harbors, and rivers. Knowledge guided decisions on occupation and defense. Geography shaped strategic imperial priorities permanently. Rival powers contested vital regions occasionally. Conflict arose over access to ports. Negotiation and treaties resolved some disputes. Strategy balanced force with diplomatic negotiation. Strategic islands enabled rapid fleet deployment. Ports served as supply points for expeditions. Control allowed influence over surrounding regions. Every acquisition reinforced Britain's global command. Trade networks depended on controlled coastal zones. Secure harbors facilitated long-distance commerce safely. Every port became node in global empire. Maritime strategy ensured continuity of British authority. Local populations were integrated into administration. Governors oversaw taxation, trade, and law. Settlements reflected both local and imperial interests. Communities adapted to dual management gradually. Resources extracted from strategic regions fueled empire. Sugar, spices, timber, and precious metals arrived. Economic value reinforced importance of controlled areas. Profits flowed steadily to British coffers daily. Surveying and fortification required careful planning. Engineers designed defences for long-term security. Every project strengthened imperial control gradually. Strategy combined geography, military, and commerce skillfully. Through islands, ports, and coasts controlled, Britain expanded influence across oceans steadily. Strategic holdings ensured empire's operational dominance. Expansion relied on foresight, planning, and power. Britain developed belief in global mission. Empire saw itself destined to rule worldwide. National pride intertwined with imperial responsibility deeply. Every colony reflected Britain's expanding purpose abroad. Public opinion supported imperial ambition strongly. Newspapers celebrated exploration, conquest, and influence. Education emphasized Britain's role on global stage. Citizens believed empire had divine-guided destiny. Political leaders promoted expansion as duty. Parliament debated territories and overseas governance. Decisions reinforced the idea of national mission. Empire's growth became justification for authority. Military victories strengthened belief in destiny. Navy and army successes inspired confidence. Control over oceans and colonies reinforced pride. Power projected both locally and globally. Merchants felt responsibility in spreading influence. Trade networks linked distant colonies tightly. Commerce became instrument of global expansion. Economic reach supported empire's overarching mission. Cultural influence accompanied territorial acquisition steadily. Language, education, and religion spread widely. Customs blended with local traditions gradually. Identity reflected Britain's global role consistently. Explorers and diplomats embraced imperial vision. Maps and reports documented mission across oceans. Every journey reinforced belief in destiny. Empire expanded with purpose and conviction. Colonial administration emphasized British ideals carefully. Governors implemented policies reflecting national goals. Settlements embodied imperial principles in practice. Communities adopted governance, laws, and trade systems. Military presence enforced empire's guiding principles. Soldiers maintained order and projected authority. Power became symbol of national responsibility. Expansion justified through service and discipline clearly. Scientific exploration supported imperial missions subtly. Botany, cartography, and astronomy flourished overseas. Knowledge strengthened claims and reinforced purpose. Empire advanced through intellect and discovery consistently. Education instilled pride in Britain's role. Students learned about colonies and maritime dominance. Lessons highlighted empire's duty to lead globally. Knowledge shaped generations supporting imperial vision. Religion played role in shaping imperial belief. Churches sponsored missions across far colonies. Faith reinforced the idea of global responsibility. Spiritual duty aligned with territorial expansion steadily. Britain believed destiny justified both conquest and diplomacy. Every treaty, alliance, and victory reinforced mission. National identity intertwined with imperial purpose firmly. Empire expanded with confidence in global role. Public and private ambition aligned with vision. Merchants, leaders, and explorers shared mission. Every act strengthened Britain's sense of destiny. Global influence became measure of national pride. Through belief in worldwide mission steadily, Britain projected authority across continents and oceans. Empire's moral and political justification intertwined fully. Global mission became driving force of expansion. Loosely held territories needed stronger control. Administrators arrived to organize distant colonies. Every settlement was mapped and structured carefully. Order replaced chaos through careful imperial planning. Governors oversaw regions with clear authority. Officials implemented policies across every territory. Local leaders worked under British guidance steadily. Empire extended administration through systematic organization. Records were kept meticulously for every region. Population, resources, and trade were documented. Information guided taxation, governance, and planning. Knowledge became foundation for efficient control. Settlements were reorganized under uniform structures. Borders clarified and jurisdictions defined clearly. Every colony followed standardized administrative practices. Empire imposed consistent rules for smoother management. Colonial councils advised governors and administrators. Decisions balanced local needs with imperial goals. Advisory systems helped maintain order effectively. Governance relied on both authority and cooperation. Officials traveled between regions regularly for inspection. Audits ensured policies were applied consistently. Problems were identified and corrected promptly. Efficiency strengthened empire's influence steadily over time. Infrastructure supported administrative reach across colonies. Roads, postal lines, and ports connected regions. Communication allowed instructions to reach every outpost. Distance no longer weakened imperial control significantly. Local populations were gradually integrated into administration. Native leaders were co-opted into governance structures. Every settlement reflected British organizational principles. Colonies became extensions of empire's management system. Central authority monitored revenues and resources carefully. Taxes collected supported both local and imperial needs. Financial systems standardized across diverse territories. Economy became tool of governance and control. Judicial systems introduced legal frameworks consistently. Courts ensured enforcement of colonial laws fairly. Justice projected authority of distant empire effectively. Every decision reinforced British governance across regions. Training programs educated administrators and clerks efficiently. Knowledge ensured capable management of every colony. Expertise grew with experience in diverse locations. Human capital strengthened empire's long-term administration. Every colony developed local bureaucracy gradually. Departments handled trade, taxation, and civil matters. Officials coordinated across regions and settlements carefully. Administrative networks extended empire's power systematically. Postal lines, roads, and ports improved communication. Messages traveled quickly across distant territories. Coordination allowed faster responses to emerging issues. Empire became connected despite geographic challenges effectively. Military garrisons reinforced administrative authority firmly. Soldiers maintained order and protected officials. Presence deterred rebellion and external threats efficiently. Security ensured policies were implemented without interference. Through structured administration, Britain consolidated power. Every colony reflected systematic governance and control. Empire's influence became enduring and organized globally. Power was projected efficiently across all territories. Legal frameworks were introduced across colonies. Courts enforced rules with impartial authority. Judges ensured laws applied consistently everywhere. Justice reflected British principles of governance steadily. Taxation systems organized revenue collection effectively. Officials calculated taxes on trade and property. Funds supported administration, infrastructure, and defense. Economy strengthened empire's administrative foundation securely. Governance structures balanced power and responsibility carefully. Colonial councils advised governors on decisions. Administrators implemented policies with strategic precision. Order maintained across far-flung settlements efficiently. Civil laws regulated daily life for colonists. Trade, land ownership, and contracts followed codes. Uniform regulations reduced disputes and confusion steadily. Empire imposed systems to ensure stability. Judicial training programs educated local magistrates. Officials learned procedures, penalties, and documentation. Knowledge ensured competent enforcement of law consistently. Legal expertise strengthened imperial control gradually. Tax revenue funded forts, roads, and ports. Infrastructure supported trade and military operations. Colonies grew more connected and organized over time. Administration relied on both funds and strategy. Governance extended into remote and rural areas. Officials traveled to oversee settlements directly. Every colony followed structured administration uniformly. Empire reinforced authority through clear, legal rules. Laws provided framework for commerce and trade. Merchants operated under predictable, regulated conditions. Contracts, duties, and tariffs standardized across territories. Economic activity thrived under organized legal oversight. Colonial governors coordinated policies with central authority. Communication ensured directives reached every region. Implementation relied on trained staff and resources. Governance became efficient and responsive to needs. Courts resolved disputes among colonists and natives. Judgments reflected British legal traditions fairly. Law supported both authority and public confidence. Order strengthened legitimacy of imperial administration steadily. Revenue collection was monitored meticulously by officials. Audits and reports ensured accurate fiscal records. Taxes reinforced both local and imperial objectives. Empire relied on law to maintain structure. Military presence backed legal authority firmly. Soldiers enforced regulations and supported officials. Garrisons ensured laws were respected locally. Security maintained order across every colony effectively. Through legal frameworks, Britain structured governance. Colonies became extensions of British authority clearly. Rule reinforced administration, economy, and control. Empire consolidated power systematically and durably globally. Communication networks connected distant colonies efficiently. Ports, roads, and postal lines expanded. Messages traveled swiftly across vast territories. Empire relied on infrastructure to maintain control. Roads linked settlements to administrative centers. Caravans transported goods and official correspondence. Travel became faster and safer for officials. Every colony grew more accessible and organized. Postal systems ensured instructions reached remote regions. Letters carried orders across oceans reliably. Timely communication supported both commerce and governance. Empire's reach extended through these vital links. Ports became hubs of trade and information. Goods arrived alongside messages from headquarters. Maritime routes connected continents seamlessly. Every shipment reinforced global imperial networks. Bridges and causeways improved overland movement consistently. Infrastructure facilitated transport of resources and personnel. Engineers mapped territories and maintained roads regularly. Empire's control strengthened through practical connectivity. Telegraphs began connecting colonies faster eventually. Messages transmitted across distances in hours. Technology revolutionized administration and trade coordination. Empire adapted to innovations for efficiency steadily. Settlers and merchants benefited from reliable infrastructure. Access to markets and governance improved gradually. Communication fostered economic and social development locally. Networks united diverse regions under central authority. Military garrisons relied on roads and ports. Troops moved quickly to respond to threats. Supply chains ensured operational readiness effectively. Empire's security depended on efficient connections constantly. Administrative orders reached local officials promptly. Governors coordinated with central authority efficiently. Colonial management became more structured and responsive. Communication was backbone of administrative stability. Trade flourished through connected ports and roads. Merchants moved goods with greater predictability. Networks enabled economic integration across colonies. Infrastructure became tool of empire's commercial power. Surveys and mapping improved network planning. Engineers charted routes for efficiency and safety. Colonial expansion was guided by geographic knowledge. Infrastructure strengthened empire's operational capabilities steadily. Postal lines maintained links between continents. Letters ensured directives flowed without delay. Coordination relied on reliable transport networks consistently. Empire's administration functioned smoothly through these systems. Communication allowed rapid response to crises. Officials dispatched troops and resources efficiently. Emergencies were managed across vast distances. Connectivity reinforced control over every territory firmly. Through ports, postal lines, and roads, Britain consolidated empire's reach systematically. Infrastructure underpinned administration, trade, and security. Networks connected the empire, sustaining global power. Military garrisons secured far-flung colonies. Soldiers protected settlements from rebellion and attack. Every outpost reinforced authority across territories. Presence ensured British policies were implemented effectively. Troops trained continuously for colonial challenges. Discipline and readiness maintained control consistently. Fortifications strengthened defensive capabilities strategically. Empire projected power through military organization steadily. Garrisons stationed near strategic ports and cities. Naval bases complemented land forces efficiently. Coordination ensured rapid response to any threat. Military presence underpinned colonial governance securely. Soldiers maintained order in growing settlements. Local populations observed power quietly and cautiously. Discipline encouraged compliance with colonial regulations. Authority extended through visible military strength deliberately. Fortified outposts protected trade routes and infrastructure. Roads, ports, and postal lines relied on security. Garrisons ensured safe passage for commerce and officials. Military presence supported empire's economic foundations consistently. Remote colonies relied heavily on station troops. Defense against uprisings and external threats prioritized. Every garrison acted as symbol of imperial power. Settlements stabilized through military vigilance effectively. Campaigns reinforced local authority and law. Soldiers assisted administrators when disputes arose. Military presence projected influence across neighboring regions. Order and control strengthened steadily through action. Naval and land forces coordinated operations carefully. Ships protected coastal colonies and communication lines. Armies secured hinterlands and resource-rich areas. Integration of forces maintained empire's strategic advantage. Garrisons fostered loyalty among local populations gradually. Troops served as intermediaries in local disputes. Military authority supported administrative and legal structures. Presence reinforced legitimacy of colonial governance continually. Fortifications and troops deterred rival powers. Enemies hesitated before challenging British territories. Strength projected across continents and oceans equally. Empire relied on force to back diplomacy subtly. Every settlement, port, and colony benefited. Security allowed trade, governance, and communication smoothly. Garrisons ensured continuity of imperial influence consistently. Military strength became backbone of global authority through disciplined garrisons across every colony. Britain consolidated control and reinforced authority steadily. Empire's reach expanded safely under military vigilance. Power was secured through strategic presence consistently. The empire gained confidence as world's largest. Britain's reach spanned continents and oceans. Power radiated from colonies to distant lands. Influence touched trade, politics, and culture globally. Success in administration enforced imperial self-assurance. Structured governance ensured stability and order. Every colony reflected organized and capable management. Confidence grew with every effective system implemented. Military strength bolstered belief in dominance. Garrisons and fleets projected authority consistently. Security reinforced empire's ability to govern effectively. Powerful presence made rivals cautious and respectful. Economic prosperity strengthened national pride firmly. Trade networks delivered wealth across every colony. London became nerve center of imperial activity. Confidence was measured through global commercial success. Diplomacy further validated empire's international stature. Alliances reflected recognition of Britain's global role. Negotiation often favored British strategic advantage. Empire acted with authority on the world stage. Technological and administrative innovations built trust. Communication networks connected every colony efficiently. Infrastructure projects supported governance and expansion. Empire believed in its capacity to manage globally. Cultural influence extended confidence beyond military might. Language, law, and education reflected imperial identity. Colonies adopted British systems gradually and consistently. Soft power reinforced empire's global perception subtly. Scientific and exploratory success boosted prestige significantly. Knowledge gathered from colonies showcased imperial capability. Discoveries emphasized Britain's role as global leader. Confidence was rooted in both intellect and power. Public sentiment reinforced belief in empire's greatness. Newspapers and literature celebrated British achievements abroad. Citizens took pride in national and colonial successes. Empire's confidence intertwined with national identity strongly. Rival powers recognized Britain's commanding presence. Negotiations and treaties reflected respect for authority. Global influence shaped international relations continuously. Empire projected certainty in strategy and governance. Every colony reflected efficiency and control systematically. Administrators, soldiers, and merchants worked in harmony. Empire's network demonstrated capability to manage complexity. Confidence grew with every functioning system reinforced through administration, military, and commerce combined. Britain became confident as world's dominant power. Every success added to imperial self-assurance steadily. Empire believed it could govern the globe fully. Colonies stretched across every distant continent. Oceans connected territories under British authority. Maps reflected Empire's vast global presence. Every region influenced by London's distant power. Naval supremacy ensured control over seas. Ships patrolled waters between colonies constantly. Merchant fleets sailed under protective escort. Sea dominance enabled uninterrupted imperial communication. Settlements on multiple continents reinforced authority. Administrators managed diverse regions efficiently and carefully. Colonial governance mirrored Britain's structured systems. Order maintained despite vast geographic separation. Strategic islands acted as connecting nodes. Ports allowed movement of goods and officials. Naval bases projected power across oceans. Empire relied on maritime strength steadily. Military presence supported far-flung colonies consistently. Garrisons ensured compliance and deterred threats. Power radiated from central command to peripheries. Colonies became extensions of imperial authority directly. Trade and commerce tied territories closely. Resources flowed from colonies to Britain efficiently. Every shipment reinforced Empire's global integration. Wealth and influence traveled across oceans constantly. Cultural practices began to unify distant regions. Education introduced British values and language systematically. Law applied uniformly across colonies consistently. Empire's identity was reflected in colonial systems. Communication connected distant outposts seamlessly. Telegraphs and postal lines bridged oceans rapidly. News and orders reached settlements without delay. Empire functioned through networks of timely information. Colonial populations observed British authority closely. Local leaders implemented policies faithfully and carefully. Settlers adopted administrative and cultural practices gradually. Empire reinforced power through both soft and hard influence. Economic coordination strengthened global reach effectively. Factories processed resources for international trade. Industry underpinned empire's commercial and political control. Industrial growth powered expansion across continents rapidly. Naval and merchant fleets ensured imperial cohesion. Ships linked colonies through organized maritime networks. Every journey reinforced interconnected global system. Empire's arteries pulsed with constant maritime activity. Military, commerce, and administration projected unified authority. Colonies functioned as interconnected parts of empire. Control extended across continents without interruption. Britain commanded vast territories through strategic organization, through colonies, oceans, and maritime supremacy. Britain reached height of global influence steadily. Every continent reflected imperial presence and power. Empire's control expanded to near global scale completely. Trade routes connected colonies across oceans. Goods flowed steadily from ports to Britain. Every shipment reinforced empire's global integration. Commerce linked continents under imperial authority firmly. Telegraph lines sped messages instantly worldwide. Orders and information reached distant settlements quickly. Communication ensured administration functioned smoothly. Empire relied on networks for coordination effectively. Shipping lanes transported resources efficiently every day. Merchant ships sailed under naval protection. Routes connected raw materials to factories. Finished goods returned across oceans to colonies. Ports became hubs of trade and control. Ships loaded and unloaded goods constantly. Customs and regulations ensured smooth operations. Empire's economy depended on maritime connectivity heavily. Carriers linked continents through precise scheduling. Trade and communication flowed with reliability. Every route supported commerce, governance, and military. Empire functioned as interconnected global systems steadily. Colonial economies thrived under organized networks. Markets integrated across continents for profit. Exports and imports balanced through imperial oversight. Empire's prosperity depended on continuous connectivity worldwide. Naval dominance protected trade routes efficiently. Convoys safeguarded merchants and valuable cargo. Ships maintained uninterrupted flow of commerce. Empire controlled seas to ensure economic stability. Postal and telegraph systems worked simultaneously. Governors received instructions without significant delay. Coordination allowed rapid administrative response effectively. Information flowed as lifeblood of global empire. Economic, military, and administrative networks intertwined seamlessly. Every colony linked to central authority efficiently. Empire functioned through unified global communication. Control depended on connectivity and reliable transport. Telegraph innovation shrank distances dramatically over time. Decisions made in London affected distant settlements. Speed of communication reinforced Britain's centralized control. Empire operated with unprecedented global efficiency steadily. Merchants, administrators, and soldiers relied on networks. Coordination ensured trade, governance, and security. Every connection strengthened empire's worldwide presence. Global influence grew through consistent network reliability. Ports, telegraphs, and shipping lines bound empire. Integration allowed rapid expansion and sustained control. Every region connected formed part of system. Empire thrived on organized global interconnection daily. Communication enabled strategic planning across continents. Military, commerce, and governance relied on infrastructure. Empire projected authority through networks and routes. Global control depended on connected operational systems through trade routes, telegraphs, and shipping lanes. Britain held unmatched global cohesion and power. Every connection reinforced empire's authority steadily. Networks became backbone of imperial dominance fully. Cultural influence spread across distant colonies steadily. Education introduced British values and language universally. Schools became tools of empire's soft power. Curriculum reinforced identity and loyalty to Britain. Law was implemented uniformly across all territories. Judges applied British legal principles consistently. Colonial courts ensured order and compliance everywhere. Justice reflected empire's authority and standards clearly. Language connected diverse populations under one identity. English became common medium for administration and trade. Colonial communication improved through linguistic standardization effectively. Culture reinforced imperial cohesion across far-flung regions. Missionaries spread religion and social customs broadly. Faith became instrument of moral and cultural influence. Churches supported education and local governance gradually. Religion reinforced British presence and authority continually. Art, literature, and media reflected British ideals. Books, newspapers, and performances promoted cultural identity. Colonial societies absorbed metropolitan customs and practices. Empire projected soft power alongside political dominance. Education prepared future administrators and leaders locally. Curriculum emphasized British history, law, and civics. Colonial elites learned governance and imperial principles. Knowledge fostered loyalty and long-term cultural integration. Cultural influence accompanied trade and economic networks. Merchants and settlers adopted British practices naturally. Every colony reflected metropolitan norms increasingly. Identity and administration intertwined across continents seamlessly. Customs, dress, and social norms were adopted. Colonial life mirrored Britain's societal structure gradually. Habit and law reinforced cultural assimilation steadily. Empire shaped lifestyle and traditions intentionally worldwide. Libraries and schools spread knowledge efficiently. Information promoted literacy, science, and civic understanding. Education became cornerstone of imperial cohesion steadily. Empire extended influence through learning and culture carefully. Media reinforced British ideals and achievements prominently. Posters, newspapers, and pamphlets reached distant regions. Cultural messaging encouraged loyalty and national pride. Information guided perceptions of empire and authority clearly. Trade networks supported cultural exchange regularly. Goods, ideas, and technologies flowed together smoothly. Every colony became a node of British influence. Empire's identity spread alongside material prosperity consistently. Local elites adopted British manners and etiquette. Political and social leadership aligned with imperial norms. Cultural assimilation strengthened administration and governance effectively. Empire maintained influence through shared identity and values. Religion, education, and law intertwined consistently. Culture became a subtle instrument of imperial control. Colonies absorbed values supporting administration and authority. Empire projected identity beyond mere military presence steadily through education, language, and legal influence. Britain shaped the world culturally and politically. Colonies internalized imperial ideals over generations gradually. Cultural power reinforced empire's global authority fully. Industrial strength powered Britain's global empire steadily. Factories produced goods for colonies and trade. Coal and iron fueled machines and railways. Industry underpinned economic and political power effectively. Railways connected cities, ports, and settlements efficiently. Goods traveled faster across land and colonies. Resources were transported to factories reliably. Infrastructure supported commerce and administration simultaneously. Factories employed thousands across urban centers daily. Workers produced textiles, steel, and manufactured goods. Colonial raw materials fueled industrial output continuously. Products shipped to empire and global markets consistently. Technology drove expansion of manufacturing capabilities rapidly. Machines replaced manual labor in many sectors. Innovation enhanced production, trade, and efficiency steadily. Industrial growth supported empire's global dominance directly. Ports handled growing volumes of goods constantly. Ships transported exports and imported essential materials. Harbors became hubs of industrial and commercial activity. Trade relied on machinery and maritime coordination efficiently. Railways strengthened internal connections within colonies. Movement of troops and resources became faster. Economic integration accelerated through industrial infrastructure steadily. Empire relied on logistics to maintain power globally. Factories promoted urbanization across Britain and colonies. Cities grew around industry and ports strategically. Population migration supported labor needs consistently. Urban centers reflected industrial and imperial strength visibly. Colonial resources powered metropolitan factories effectively. Sugar, cotton, metals, and timber arrived regularly. Raw materials fueled production for global markets. Empire benefited economically from worldwide resource networks. Industry enabled large-scale shipbuilding and naval construction. Fleets maintained control over oceans and trade. Maritime power relied on industrial output continually. Empire's global dominance reinforced through production capacity efficiently. Innovation in machinery enhanced communication and transport. Telegraphs, trains, and mechanized systems spread rapidly. Empire adapted to new technologies for efficiency. Industrial growth reinforced administrative and military networks consistently. Factories created surplus wealth for investment abroad. Capital funded colonial projects, infrastructure, and armies. Economic growth sustained empire's expansion and influence. Financial power supported authority and global reach reliably. Industrial strength influenced global trade patterns significantly. Britain exported manufactured goods to distant colonies. Imports supplied raw materials for continued production. Empire's economy thrived through industrial and commercial synergy. Workers' skills spread to colonies gradually over time. Knowledge transfer enabled local industrial and administrative growth. Training strengthened capacity to manage production effectively. Empire extended influence through human capital and technology, through factories, railways, and industrial power. Britain projected authority across continents reliably. Economic strength reinforced political and military dominance. Industrialization became backbone of global imperial control fully. The phrase "the sun never sets" spread. Britain ruled lands across every time zone, morning in India, night in Canada. Empire's reach spanned continents and oceans simultaneously. Colonies existed on every inhabited continent. Global presence reinforced Britain's dominant authority. Every sunrise found empire extending influence. Every sunset reflected ongoing governance worldwide consistently. Naval power ensured constant connectivity across oceans. Fleets patrolled waters between distant territories. Ships transported officials, goods, and information. Maritime supremacy kept empire linked efficiently everywhere. Trade routes connected morning to evening continually. Goods and resources flowed without interruption. Markets operated across vast geographic distances. Empire thrived through synchronized global commerce daily. Communication networks spanned continents effortlessly over time. Telegraphs and postal lines bridged oceans quickly. Messages ensured coordination between far-off colonies. Empire functioned through reliable information networks consistently. Colonial administration mirrored metropolitan governance closely. Law, taxation, and education maintained uniformity everywhere. Policies enforced identity and authority systematically. Empire projected consistency across global territories steadily. Cultural influence extended as far as trade. Education, language, and religion spread British ideals. Colonies adopted customs reflecting imperial identity. Soft power reinforced authority alongside military presence. Industrial strength supported empire's global operations. Factories, railways, and ports powered distant lands. Resources flowed to Britain, fueling administration effectively. Economic integration reinforced global reach steadily and securely. Military presence ensured continuous oversight of territories. Garrisons and fleets protected trade and settlements. Power was projected visibly across continents consistently. Empire relied on force as subtle backing continually. Global coordination became hallmark of British control. Policies, trade, and culture moved in synchrony. Every region functioned as part of network. Empire relied on organization for worldwide authority. Public perception reinforced empire's omnipresent image. Books, newspapers, and speeches praised imperial reach. Every citizen felt connected to distant colonies. National identity intertwined with empire's global presence. Technology and infrastructure supported the empire's promise. Railways, telegraphs, and ports linked continents effectively. Empire maintained influence across oceans through innovation. Connectivity ensured authority stretched from pole to pole. Diplomacy reflected recognition of global supremacy. Alliances acknowledged Britain's unmatched worldwide power. Treaties reinforced control without additional conflict. Empire projected strength both subtly and openly. Every colony operated within imperial system reliably. Trade, governance, and communication reflected cohesion everywhere. Empire's authority extended seamlessly across far-flung regions. Global control became symbolized by continuous presence through territory, trade, and sun-spanning authority. Britain became the empire for which sun never set. Every sunrise and sunset confirmed global reach. Imperial power touched every corner of the world. Local populations began demanding more autonomy. Communities sought recognition of their own identity. Colonial subjects questioned distant imperial authority continually. Cultural pride fueled desire for self-governance steadily. People resisted imposed laws and regulations subtly. Traditions clashed with British administrative systems regularly. Local customs persisted despite colonial enforcement carefully. Identity became rallying points against imperial rule quietly. Education and religion were sometimes contested slowly. Schools promoted British values, resisted by locals. Missionaries introduced foreign customs, facing opposition constantly. Colonial influence was challenged through cultural resilience effectively. Leaders emerged advocating for local rights boldly. Spokespeople represented communities to challenge authority openly. Voices demanded participation in governance and decision-making. Empire faced growing pressure from organized local groups. Economic control became source of tension subtly. Taxes and trade policies were questioned by populations. Resource extraction created resentment across colonial communities. Colonial economy sparked desire for autonomy consistently. Local assemblies and councils sought influence gradually. Colonial representatives requested involvement in policy decisions. Negotiation highlighted limits of imperial authority carefully. Communities pressed for recognition and governance participation steadily. Cultural identity reinforced resistance movements subtly. Language, religion, and customs became symbols of pride. Communities preserved heritage against homogenizing imperial policies. Identity fueled both passive and active defiance effectively. Every colony experienced tension differently across regions. Some resisted through diplomacy, others openly challenged. Empire confronted diverse expressions of discontent simultaneously. Control required constant adaptation and attention carefully. Intellectual movements questioned legitimacy of British dominance. Writers and thinkers promoted local autonomy ideas. Political discourse evolved, challenging imperial governance gradually. Awareness of rights grew within colonial societies effectively. Social organizations mobilized communities against authority quietly. Networks spread information about grievances and protests. Grassroots movements demanded recognition of cultural uniqueness. Empire confronted organized resistance from local populations steadily. Local populations sometimes allied with rival powers. External support reinforced movements for autonomy effectively. Empire's control was tested by both internal and external forces. Resistance became more complex and widespread continually. Economic strikes challenged colonial policies significantly. Laborers refused to work under imperial mandates. Trade disruptions revealed vulnerability of administrative control. Resistance was practical as well as symbolic strategically. Every challenge highlighted limits of British authority. Empire faced pressures from identity, culture, and economy. Governance required compromise and adaptation frequently. Resistance reshaped imperial priorities gradually across colonies through growing demand for autonomy and identity. Britain confronted realities of ruling diverse peoples. Empire's global authority was questioned consistently. Local voices shaped future of imperial governance subtly. Resistance movements rose across many colonies rapidly. Groups organized secretly to challenge imperial authority. Leaders inspired people with visions of freedom. Colonial unrest grew steadily under British observation. Protests began in cities and rural areas. Workers, students, and farmers demanded change consistently. Every act challenged the legitimacy of empire. Resistance became both visible and widespread gradually. Armed uprisings occurred in strategic regions occasionally. Colonial militias confronted imperial troops directly. Clashes tested British military and administrative power. Conflict highlighted limits of controlling distant lands. Nationalist societies spread messages of self-determination widely. Pamphlets, newspapers, and meetings informed public constantly. Ideas of independence inspired local populations repeatedly. Movements gained momentum, despite strict colonial oversight carefully. Resistance was often met with harsh reprisals. Garrisons and police suppressed uprisings swiftly. Punishments aimed to deter future rebellions effectively. Empire relied on force to maintain order continually. Some movements used legal and political strategies. Petitions, negotiations, and advocacy challenged colonial policies. Non-violent resistance tested patience of administrators gradually. Empire had to adapt to diverse tactics consistently. Cultural revival became part of resistance strategies. Language, religion, and tradition strengthened identity firmly. Colonists reclaimed practices suppressed by imperial rule. Cultural assertion became tool for political defiance effectively. Urban centers became hubs of organized protest. Workers and students coordinated strikes systematically. City streets echoed with calls for reform. Empire faced organized resistance in strategic locations consistently. Communication networks helped spread resistance across regions. Messages, letters, and newspapers informed distant colonies. Coordination enabled synchronized actions and demonstrations effectively. Movements became more cohesive over time gradually. Women participated actively in resistance campaigns boldly. They organized, educated, and protested within communities. Social networks amplified their influence and impact. Empire underestimated cultural and gendered dimensions of resistance. Economic disruptions pressured British administration steadily. Strikes and boycotts affected trade and taxation. Financial impact revealed vulnerability of imperial systems. Resistance intertwined with economy as strategic leverage efficiently. Education fueled nationalist movements across colonies gradually. Students questioned legitimacy of imperial education systems. Institutions became incubators for political thought. Young leaders inspired broader movements consistently and subtly. Local heroes became symbols of resistance globally. Their actions inspired other colonies to rise. Empire faced challenges from both prominent and ordinary citizens. Rebellion took many forms across territories simultaneously. through rising resistance within colonies persistently. Britain confronted growing threats to imperial authority. Movements demanded change, autonomy, and recognition steadily. Empire's control faced increasingly organized opposition globally. Britain confronted the cost of ruling globally. Administering distant colonies demanded immense financial resources. Maintaining garrisons, fleets, and bureaucracy was expensive. Empire stretched its capabilities across continents steadily. Military campaigns drained the treasury significantly over time. Troops required supplies, pay, and constant reinforcement. Every conflict increased expenditure and strained administration. Cost of control tested imperial priorities continually. Infrastructure projects demanded continuous investment abroad. Roads, ports, and telegraphs required maintenance frequently. Colonial economies were supported through costly subsidies. Empire bore financial burden to sustain authority effectively. Civil administration indeed trained personnel across regions. Officials required salaries, housing, and transportation consistently. Recruitment and training added to mounting expenses. Human resources became a significant portion of empire's cost. Resistance movements further increased military and policing needs. Suppressing uprisings required both manpower and strategy. Every rebellion added logistical and operational costs. Empire's authority demanded continual expenditure of resources steadily. Economic pressures were felt in Britain itself. Taxes and borrowing funded colonial administration continually. Public debate questioned sustainability of global commitments. Cost of empire became subject of scrutiny repeatedly. Communication networks were expensive, but essential consistently. Telegraph lines, postal routes, and shipping required upkeep. Maintaining coordination across oceans demanded technology and manpower. Empire relied on costly infrastructure for operational efficiency. Trade networks were disrupted by unrest occasionally. Revenue fluctuations increased financial uncertainty across colonies. Economic mismanagement could threaten stability of imperial rule. Empire had to balance profit against expenditure carefully. Natural disasters and famines increased administrative burdens. Relief required resources and rapid coordination strategically. Colonial populations depended on empire for survival constantly. Unexpected events added layers of financial and logistical challenge. Maintaining cultural and educational systems added further cost. Schools, courts, and missionary activities required funding regularly. Empire invested in soft power to ensure loyalty. Cultural administration reinforced authority, but demanded financial commitment. Every additional colony increased administrative complexity and expense. Larger territories required more officials, troops, and infrastructure. Expansion magnified logistical and fiscal challenges significantly. Empire's reach came with ever-growing responsibility gradually. Political costs also weighed heavily on Britain. Debates in Parliament questioned colonial expenditure repeatedly. Public opinion scrutinized the price of global rule. Empire faced challenges at home alongside overseas obligations. Military innovation and technology required constant investment. Ships, arms, and training programs were costly. Empire relied on continuous modernization to maintain control. Technological expenditure reinforced authority, but strained budgets steadily. Through rising costs, Britain recognized empire's fragility. Ruling diverse regions demanded strategic and fiscal planning. Authority came with both power and heavy responsibility. Empire's global dominance was expensive to sustain continuously. Nationalist voices reshaped imperial authority gradually. Colonial leaders demanded political representation and rights. Movements emerged to redefine governance locally effectively. Empire faced intellectual and political challenges simultaneously. Ideas of self-rule spread across colonies steadily. Educated elites questioned legitimacy of distant authority. Calls for autonomy grew louder every year. Empire confronted ideological threats to control consistently. Political organizations formed to challenge imperial policies. Parties and councils debated colonial reform actively. Grassroots movements aligned with educated leaders' visions. Coordination strengthened campaigns demanding recognition systematically. Mass demonstrations pressured British administrators consistently. Citizens voiced dissent through petitions and protests. Colonial society increasingly influenced governance and decision-making. Empire struggled to respond effectively to growing demands. Nationalist newspapers spread ideas widely and quickly. Articles criticized imperial policies and promoted independence. Public opinion became instrument for challenging authority. Media amplified nationalist voices across colonies efficiently. Education nurtured future leaders of autonomy movements. Schools produced thinkers questioning imperial legitimacy consciously. Students became advocates for self-determination actively. Young generations embraced nationalist ideology steadily and firmly. Cultural pride reinforced political aspirations clearly. Language, religion, and heritage strengthened nationalist movements. Communities united under shared identity to resist control. Cultural assertion became inseparable from political struggle gradually. Negotiations emerged to address demands partially. Empire conceded reforms in limited capacities strategically. Compromises reflected awareness of changing colonial realities. Authority adjusted cautiously to avoid widespread revolt. Labor strikes pressured colonial economies steadily. Workers' demands intertwined with nationalist aspirations naturally. Economic unrest became part of broader political strategy. Empire faced multi-layered challenges across regions simultaneously. Women played active roles in nationalist campaigns. They organized, educated, and led local initiatives. Female participation amplified movements' reach and impact. Empire underestimated cultural and gendered dimensions of resistance. Global events influenced nationalist movements significantly. Wars and international pressure encouraged calls for change. Colonies drew inspiration from other independence struggles. Empire's authority was challenged from both inside and outside. Political negotiation became essential for maintaining control. Concessions reflected growing recognition of local voices. Empire adjusted structures gradually to accommodate pressures. Authority evolved in response to nationalist demands consistently, through rising nationalist voices persistently across colonies. Britain's imperial authority began to transform steadily. Control shifted from absolute rule to negotiated power. Colonial self-expression reshaped structure of global empire gradually. External events weakened Britain's global control gradually. Wars, revolutions, and economic crises challenged authority. Distant conflicts drained military and financial resources. Empire struggled to maintain cohesion across continents steadily. Global wars disrupted trade and communication networks. Shipping lanes were threatened by enemy fleets. Colonial economies suffered due to wartime shortages. Empire faced logistical challenges under constant pressure consistently. Economic depression reduced funding for administration effectively. Revenue declined, while expenses continued to rise. Financial strain limited capacity to manage colonies efficiently. Empire's reach was tested by fiscal limitations steadily. Rival powers exploited Britain's distractions strategically. Colonial territories were threatened by competing nations. Diplomatic negotiations became more complex and urgent. External pressure forced empire to adapt constantly. Natural disasters compounded imperial difficulties globally. Famine, disease, and environmental events demanded resources. Relief efforts strained administration and treasury simultaneously. Empire's authority was tested by unforeseen challenges repeatedly. Nationalist movements gained momentum from international examples. Revolutions abroad inspired local uprisings immediately. Colonies drew courage from global events steadily. Empire faced interconnected challenges from internal and external pressures. Wars increased human costs for empire significantly. Troops and civilians suffered across multiple regions. Morale and loyalty were challenged by continuous conflict. Empire struggled to maintain authority amidst human cost effectively. Political instability in Britain affected colonial governance quickly. Changes in leadership altered imperial priorities suddenly. Policies were revised to address shifting realities cautiously. Colonial administration had to adapt to home pressures. Technological and industrial competition reduced Britain's edge. Other nations modernized fleets and infrastructure rapidly. Empire faced rising international rivalry for influence. Global control became harder to sustain strategically. Communication delays worsened during external crises frequently. Orders were slow to reach distant colonies reliably. Decision-making became more difficult under disrupted networks. Empire's responsiveness was weakened by global disturbances steadily. Economic sanctions and trade blockades created shortages. Colonies experienced inflation and scarcity of essential goods. Empire's dependency on global commerce was revealed clearly. Control relied on stable international networks consistently. Local rebellions were emboldened by external weaknesses. Colonial leaders exploited Britain's distracted focus skillfully. Resistance movements coordinated with international events strategically. Empire's authority faced simultaneous pressure from multiple fronts. Alliances and treaties constrained imperial decision-making subtly. Diplomatic obligations limited freedom of action globally. External obligations forced compromises on local governance. Empire had to balance multiple priorities simultaneously and carefully, through wars, crises, and global events persistently. Britain's ability to maintain total control weakened. Empire confronted limits of authority and resources clearly. Global realities reshaped the scope of British power steadily. Colonies increasingly sought self-rule steadily. Negotiations replaced conquest as primary method. Local leaders demanded representation and authority locally. Empire faced shift from force to diplomacy consistently. Political dialogue became central to governance gradually. Treaties and agreements outlined autonomy clearly. Colonial administrations adapted to new realities carefully. Empire relied on negotiation to maintain influence subtly. Education fostered leadership and self-governance ideas. Local elites prepared to assume political responsibility. Institutions trained administrators for independent rule. Empire encouraged gradual transition without abrupt disruption steadily. National constitutions were drafted with imperial guidance. Legal frameworks reflected balance of power carefully. Colonial input shaped policies and governance structures. Self-rule was negotiated incrementally over decades effectively. Economic arrangements evolved during negotiation processes subtly. Trade agreements preserved links while granting autonomy. Financial transition allowed stability during independence movements. Empire maintained economic influence without direct control constantly. Military presence decreased as colonies assumed authority gradually. Garrisons withdrew strategically to allow self-administration. Local forces took over security responsibilities gradually. Empire's role shifted from direct ruler to advisor steadily. Diplomacy ensured peaceful transfer of power consistently. Negotiations prioritized avoiding violence and instability locally. Colonies gained sovereignty through discussion and compromise. Empire facilitated smooth transitions while maintaining relationships carefully, through colonies seeking self-rule persistently and effectively. Britain transitioned from conquest to diplomatic governance. Authority was shared, negotiated, and gradually ceded. Empire adapted to changing global political realities steadily. Independence movements gained strength across continents steadily. Leaders mobilized people with clear political visions. Grassroots support fueled campaigns for self-governance consistently. Colonies prepared to take control of administration gradually. Nationalist organizations coordinated actions across regions effectively. Mass protests pressured British authorities continuously. Movements utilized both peaceful and confrontational strategies. Empire faced persistent challenges to its authority directly. Educated elites inspired population with new ideas. Political discourse questioned legitimacy of imperial control repeatedly. Students, professionals, and leaders became vocal advocates. Intellectual movements reinforced demand for autonomy steadily. International events encouraged colonies to accelerate independence efforts. Wars and global crises weakened Britain's influence temporarily. External support emboldened nationalist campaigns strategically. Empire's capacity to resist was increasingly limited globally. Economic independence became central to nationalist agendas carefully. Trade, finance, and resources shifted toward local control. Revenue generation was prioritized by emerging governments steadily. Empire adapted to preserve economic ties indirectly. Cultural pride reinforced political aspirations naturally and strongly. Language, traditions, and religion supported self-rule initiatives. Heritage became rallying point for nationalist movements. Empire's soft power was challenged by cultural resurgence consistently. Negotiations formalized transfer of authority gradually and carefully. Colonial governments assumed responsibility for internal affairs. Treaties recognized sovereignty while preserving strategic ties. Empire managed transitions with minimal conflict steadily. Armed struggles occurred in some territories occasionally. Resistance and negotiation sometimes occurred simultaneously effectively. Conflict accelerated independence, but often required compromise later. Empire balanced authority with pragmatic concessions consistently, through independence movements gaining momentum persistently worldwide. Britain witnessed emergence of new sovereign nations gradually. Colonial rule gave way to self-determined governance steadily. Empire adapted to realities of a changing global order fully. Britain stepped back as nations emerged gradually. Colonial administrators handed power to local leaders. Governance transitioned peacefully in most regions carefully. Empire adapted to changing political realities steadily. Sovereign states assumed control over internal affairs. New constitutions established legal frameworks independently. Parliaments and assemblies reflected local authority fully. Britain observed transitions with strategic patience quietly. Diplomatic relations replaced direct rule effectively. Ambassadors represented Britain instead of governors. Treaties maintained connections while respecting sovereignty. Empire shifted from control to influence subtly. Military withdrawal marked end of direct dominance. Troops returned home as local forces strengthened. Security responsibilities transferred to emerging governments responsibly. Empire's presence became symbolic rather than practical steadily. Economic links continued under new arrangements carefully. Trade agreements sustained prosperity for both parties. Investment projects adapted to independent governance structures. Empire preserved interests without administrative interference steadily. Cultural influence remained through language and institutions. Education, law, and media maintained subtle ties. Colonies retained British systems despite political independence. Empire continued shaping culture indirectly across nations consistently. Diplomatic support guided fragile governments cautiously. Advisors and missions assisted in policy implementation. Britain encouraged stability while respecting autonomy gradually. Empire acted as mentor rather than ruler intentionally. International organizations absorbed former colonies gradually over decades. States joined Commonwealth and other cooperative frameworks. Shared history became basis for ongoing partnerships. Empire evolved into a global network of relationships steadily, through Britain stepping back consistently worldwide. Sovereign nations took responsibility for their futures. Empire transitioned from ruler to partner gradually. Global map reflected rise of independent states steadily. Direct rule ended, but cultural ties remained. Education systems preserved British language and values. Legal frameworks continued reflecting imperial influence subtly. Colonial institutions adapted to local governance gradually. British customs influenced society even after independence. Architecture, literature, and arts reflected past connections. Traditions merged with local culture carefully over time. Empire's cultural legacy persisted across newly sovereign nations steadily. Education maintained links between Britain and former colonies. Schools taught British history alongside national curricula. Universities hosted students from around the former empire. Knowledge exchange reinforced enduring relationships, subtly and steadily. Media and literature continued shaping public perception globally. Books, newspapers, and films reflected shared heritage consistently. Cultural products bridged distant nations naturally and slowly. Empire's influence remained visible despite political independence steadily. Legal systems mirrored British structures in many nations. Courts, law codes, and procedures were familiar. Judicial continuity provided stability during transition periods. Empire's governance principles lingered quietly within institutions. Sport and social customs maintained subtle influence continuously. Cricket, rugby, and ceremonial traditions connected communities. Former colonies celebrated shared heritage alongside local pride. Cultural bonds strengthened identity while respecting autonomy steadily. Economic relationships continued under mutual benefit agreements. Trade networks persisted despite political separation gradually. Investment and commerce sustained links with former territories. Empire's financial influence remained relevant through soft mechanisms steadily. Diplomatic ties reflected history and cooperation consistently. Ambassadors, embassies, and organizations ensured dialogue continued. Commonwealth facilitated collaboration across independent nations effectively. Empire evolved from direct power to partnership steadily. Through end of direct rule consistently, Britain maintained connections across global communities. Political independence coexisted with cultural influence subtly. Empire transitioned gracefully to enduring global relationships steadily. Transition moved empire into independent community gradually. Former colonies became sovereign states with autonomy. Political structures reflected self-rule and national identity. Empire shifted from control to cooperative partnership steadily. Commonwealth formed as network of independent nations. Shared history and culture connected member states. Diplomatic ties encouraged collaboration and mutual respect. Empire evolved into network rather than ruling power consistently. Trade, education, and culture maintained ongoing influence. Economic and social connections persisted across continents. Former colonies retained links through commerce and knowledge. Empire's legacy shaped relationships beyond political authority gradually. Governance focused on mutual cooperation and dialogue. States collaborated while preserving local autonomy fully. International forums facilitated discussion and shared initiatives. Empire transitioned from hierarchy to partnership steadily. Cultural exchanges continued through arts and education. Language, literature, and institutions maintained shared understanding. Programs promoted learning and historical awareness globally. Empire remained influential through ideas and heritage steadily. Military presence was replaced by strategic cooperation cautiously. Joint training, peacekeeping, and advisory missions emerged. Security became shared responsibility among independent nations. Empire's former authority was replaced by collaboration consistently. National identities flourished within cooperative framework gradually. Independence empowered countries while maintaining friendly ties. Political self-determination coexisted with shared legacy subtly. Empire adapted to post-colonial realities without coercion steadily. Economic partnerships reinforced mutual benefits worldwide consistently. Investments, trade agreements, and development programs expanded. Former colonies engaged in global networks together. Empire continued shaping prosperity through voluntary cooperation steadily. Through transition from empire consistently and gradually, Britain became partner in global community peacefully. Former colonies thrived independently yet connected culturally. Empire's influence endured in new forms steadily worldwide. Britain focused on rebuilding itself gradually. Cities, industries, and infrastructure needed restoration consistently. War recovery demanded resilience and careful planning. Nations sought stability and renewed national identity steadily. Modern institutions were strengthened across government steadily. Parliamentary reforms addressed post-imperial challenges directly. Economic policies encouraged industrial and financial recovery consistently. Nation adapted to shifting global power dynamics gradually. Investments revitalized manufacturing and trade sectors carefully. Ports, factories, and businesses received focused attention. Innovation supported growth and international competitiveness continually. Britain prioritized modernization across economy and society steadily. Education systems were restructured to meet contemporary needs. Universities expanded programs for science, technology, and arts. Skills development supported industrial and global engagement effectively. Knowledge became foundation of Britain's post-imperial strength consistently. Infrastructure projects connected urban centres efficiently nationwide. Roads, railways, and communications facilitated economic revival. Modern transportation improved trade and mobility steadily. Nation rebuilt with both speed and strategic foresight. Political leadership emphasized international engagement and cooperation. Diplomacy became central to projecting influence abroad. Britain focused on alliances and collaborative initiatives gradually. Government sought to strengthen ties without territorial rule. Economic strategies promoted global trade relationships consistently. Exports, imports, and investment supported national growth. Former colonies remained key partners in commerce steadily. Trade became a vital tool of influence post-empire gradually. Urban renewal transformed cities socially and culturally. Housing, education, and public services were modernized. Rebuilding enhanced quality of life across populations steadily. Nation emerged stronger after decades of global change. Military focus shifted toward defense and deterrence cautiously. Overseas garrisons were reduced while maintaining strategic reach. Britain relied on alliances for security and influence. Global engagement emphasized coordination over direct rule steadily. Science and technology became pillars of national renewal. Research, innovation, and industry supported economic resurgence. Britain invested in knowledge and technical expertise continually. Modernization became essential for maintaining international relevance gradually. Culture and media promoted national identity subtly. Art, literature, and broadcasting shaped domestic and global perception. Soft power was harnessed through creative and educational avenues. Britain rebuilt prestige without military dominance steadily, through rebuilding itself as modern independent power. Britain regained influence cautiously on global stage. Nation adapted to new realities post-empire steadily. Recovery emphasized resilience, innovation, and strategic vision continually. Britain used diplomacy to maintain influence globally. Ambassadors represented nation across continents strategically. Negotiations and treaties strengthened political relationships carefully. International engagement emphasized dialogue over territorial control steadily. Trade became a key instrument of power. Exports, imports, and financial links connected nations. Economic influence extended without direct colonial authority consistently. Commerce reinforced Britain's global presence gradually and effectively. Cultural diplomacy promoted British ideas subtly worldwide. Art, literature, and media fostered shared understanding consistently. Institutions showcased heritage and modern values globally. Soft influence replaced dominance of military rule gradually. Education programs attracted students from former colonies. Universities hosted global scholars and professionals steadily. Knowledge exchange reinforced connections across nations efficiently. Training and collaboration built long-term relationships consistently. Commonwealth provided framework for international cooperation smoothly. Former colonies engaged in diplomacy and shared initiatives. Britain supported collective goals without direct governance. Global network maintained links and influence subtly. Sports and cultural events strengthened international presence. Cricket, rugby, and art showcased Britain globally. Cultural interactions encouraged mutual respect and recognition. Soft power promoted unity and shared identity gradually. Media projected British values and perspectives internationally. News, literature, and broadcasting shaped public perception. Information networks maintained influence across continents consistently. Global communication reinforced Britain's role in world affairs. Science and technology partnerships promoted collaboration abroad. Research initiatives connected universities and institutions globally. Innovation shared with former colonies and allies steadily. Knowledge diplomacy strengthened influence without coercion gradually, through diplomacy, trade, and cultural engagement consistently. Britain maintained global influence without colonial control. Soft power replaced traditional imperial authority gradually. Nation positioned itself strategically in changing world steadily. Soft power replaced military rule steadily. Education, media, and language influenced globally subtly. Britain promoted ideas and values abroad consistently. Cultural influence became key instrument of authority gradually. Schools and universities attracted international students widely. Curricula reflected British knowledge and perspectives carefully. Students gained skills while forming global connections. Education reinforced influence without territorial governance effectively. Media and broadcasting projected British perspectives worldwide. News, literature, and film shaped public understanding subtly. Cultural output reflected history, innovation, and creativity consistently. Global audiences engaged with British ideas gradually and steadily. Language became a lasting connection across nations. English spread through education and commerce consistently. Communication strengthened ties between Britain and former colonies. Soft influence maintained cohesion without direct control effectively. Arts and literature fostered shared cultural appreciation globally. Exhibitions, performances, and publications showcased British creativity consistently. Creative industries built networks and influence abroad gradually. Soft power relied on inspiration rather than coercion steadily. Institutions and organizations promoted international collaboration subtly. Think tanks, universities, and NGOs connected experts worldwide. Knowledge exchange reinforced Britain's relevance post-empire effectively. Global cooperation maintained influence without colonial authority gradually. Sports diplomacy strengthened cultural and social ties actively. Cricket, rugby, and events fostered community and connection. Shared traditions created lasting engagement across nations. Soft influence reached beyond politics and economics consistently. Science and research partnerships encouraged collaboration internationally. Projects shared knowledge between Britain and global partners. Innovation reinforced modern identity and strategic relevance steadily. Soft power supported influence in multiple spheres effectively, through education, media, and cultural influence persistently. Britain maintained presence without military or territorial power. Soft power became cornerstone of post-imperial strategy gradually. Nation reshaped global role through ideas and culture steadily. Former colonies shaped a new multicultural Britain. Immigrants brought traditions, languages, and cuisine consistently. Communities blended local and colonial cultural influences. Society evolved through diversity and shared experiences steadily. Cities transformed with global populations steadily. London, Birmingham, and Manchester welcomed many arrivals. Neighborhoods reflected variety of cultures harmoniously. Britain embraced new identities alongside historic heritage gradually. Education highlighted diversity and inclusion consistently. Schools taught multiple languages and cultural histories actively. Students learned to navigate globalized society carefully. Multiculturalism became part of national identity gradually. Arts and music reflected colonial influences subtly. Literature, theatre, and music merged styles creatively. New cultural expressions emerged across society steadily. Creative industries showcased multicultural Britain worldwide consistently. Cuisine reflected blend of global traditions continuously. Restaurants, markets, and festivals introduced diverse flavors. Food became symbol of multicultural integration naturally. Culinary culture connected communities across generations steadily. Media represented multicultural voices prominently and thoughtfully. Television, radio, and press highlighted diverse perspectives consistently. Public discourse included contributions from global communities. Stories reflected experiences of both locals and immigrants steadily. Religious diversity shaped social and cultural life. Faith communities contributed to education and charity actively. Interfaith dialogue fostered tolerance and cooperation consistently. Multicultural Britain promoted harmony and inclusion gradually. Political representation adapted to multicultural society gradually. Leaders emerged from immigrant communities progressively. Policies addressed integration, equality, and social cohesion consistently. Democracy reflected broader participation across diverse populations steadily. Sports showcased unity in diversity consistently. Teams, leagues, and events included global participants. Competition strengthened identity while celebrating multicultural heritage. Social cohesion benefited from shared athletic engagement gradually. Economic contributions of immigrants strengthened national growth steadily. Entrepreneurship, labor, and innovation diversified industries effectively. Global connections enhanced trade, education, and culture naturally. Multiculturalism became cornerstone of Britain's post-imperial identity, consist through former colonies shaping society persistently. Britain became modern, diverse, and globally connected. Multiculturalism enriched culture, economy, and national identity steadily. Legacy of empire influenced society positively and inclusively continuously. Britain established new global roles gradually. Influence shifted from colonies to international cooperation. Diplomacy, trade, and culture defined global presence. Nation adapted to post-imperial realities steadily. Leadership emphasized alliances, treaties, and partnerships consistently. Britain worked with Europe, America, and Commonwealth actively. Global forums became arenas for influence and strategy. Nation relied on negotiation rather than coercion steadily. Economic strategy reinforced Britain's international relevance consistently. Trade, investment, and finance connected former colonies. Global commerce ensured continued prosperity and influence gradually. Soft power replaced territorial authority effectively and subtly. Cultural diplomacy projected Britain's values worldwide steadily. Media, education, and arts fostered shared understanding consistently. Knowledge exchange maintained connections across continents carefully. Nation promoted cooperation through influence, not dominance gradually. Military roles shifted toward defense and peacekeeping strategically. Britain participated in international operations collaboratively. Alliances provided security without direct colonial control. Global engagement focused on multilateral cooperation steadily. Science and technology partnerships strengthened strategic influence gradually. Innovation connected universities, researchers, and industries internationally. Knowledge became tool for collaboration and soft power consistently. Britain remained relevant through expertise and innovation steadily. Humanitarian and development initiatives expanded global impact consistently. Aid, disaster relief, and education programs supported nations. Empire's legacy evolved into constructive global participation naturally. Soft power shaped perception without political control steadily, through establishing new roles persistently worldwide. Britain maintained relevance in a changing world. Influence relied on cooperation, culture, and diplomacy steadily. Nation transformed post-empire into modern global actor consistently. British rule left enduring marks on laws globally. Languages spread across continents, shaping communication widely. Administrative systems influenced governance in distant lands. Colonial structures became frameworks for modern societies steadily. The empire's impact reshaped politics and economies consistently. Trade networks and governance models connected the world. Cultural exchanges reflected a mix of influence and adaptation. Global culture bears traces of Britain's reach persistently. Its legacy carried innovation, ambition, and occasional conflict. Industrial, scientific, and educational advancements spread worldwide. Challenges of power and responsibility defined imperial history. The empire's story teaches lessons about governance and ambition gradually. An island kingdom altered the course of human history. From exploration to global influence, Britain's reach expanded. Ideas, trade, and culture traversed oceans and continents. Its transformation of societies remains a pivotal historical chapter steadily. Though the empire formally ended, echoes endure everywhere. Institutions, language, and culture reflect lasting influence subtly. Modern nations continue interacting through shared legacies consistently. The British Empire changed the world forever, leaving marks still visible.